So here's three receivers I think are going to be duds heading into Week 10. And the first guy's Adam Thielen of the Minnesota Vikings. It's been an up and down fantasy season for Thielen. And now in the last two games, he just hasn't done anything really. Week 8, 4 targets, 3 catches, 27 yards at Green Bay. And then last week, only 5 targets, 2 catches, and 38 yards. And part of the problem, it's Dalvin Cook also. I've been saying this all week. This offense, it's going to ride through Cook. He's having a monster season. His last 2 games, he's got over 200 yards in both games from scrimmage. Cook's got 6 touchdowns in the last 2 games, so they're going to keep feeding him. Adam Thielen, even before Cook took off like this, he was having some up and down games, but now the targets are going down. The Vikings are playing with the lead in the last 2 games, and now he's got a tough matchup on Monday Night Football this week in Chicago. So it's going to be a tough game. The weather's probably going to be brutal. It's probably going to be windy. You know, Cousins and the Vikings, they're going to ride the hot hand of Cook. So I could see Thielen once again have a game like he had the last 2 weeks with only 5 to 6 fantasy points. I had him on my bench list this week, and I'm having him as a dud also this week. The second receiver is Diontae Johnson, another guy I'm just not a big fan of. The only plus for him now is Ben Roethlisberger. He'll be activated off the COVID list tomorrow, and he'll play in Sunday's game at home versus the Cincinnati Bengals. But Diontae Johnson, he's an every other week wide receiver, and he was a guy I said to go out there and sell after coming off a pretty decent game versus the Dallas Cowboys in Week 9, where he had 14 fantasy points, 6 catches for 77 yards. The targets are there for Johnson in most weeks, but like I said, he's an every other week player. He could have a dud game to 0 to 1 points, which he's done this year. I feel like he gets injured a lot and leaves games and then comes back. He's just a guy I don't trust. I have him in one of my leagues. I couldn't ship him off, so I just got him sitting on the bench. I'd rather play other guys than him. And Diontae Johnson this week, I could definitely see a dud performance from him versus Cincinnati, where they get an early lead is Pittsburgh, and James Conner and Benny Snell run the clock out. So this week, I'm putting a dud next to Diontae Johnson's name. And the third and final receiver, I've been talking about it for weeks now, is Devontae Parker. I think he's going to be a dud once again this week for the Miami Dolphins as they verse the Chargers. Even though the Chargers defense ain't that good, Devontae Parker, last week he had 12 fantasy points, 6 catches, 64 yards on 7 targets. So he had a pretty decent PPR day, 12.5 fantasy points. But the week before that versus the Rams in Miami, 1 catch for 3 yards and a touchdown on 2 targets. And Devontae Parker, I don't know what he's going to do. He's got the Chargers. They give up the 25th least fantasy points to wide receivers, so they're doing some decent jobs on receivers. It's mostly the running backs and tight ends doing the damage. This week, Parker, I just can't trust him. I didn't even rank him in my top 30, I think, at the receiver rankings, or he was at the bottom at 28th. But anyway, with Tua, I just don't think the workload's going to be there. Now, Preston Williams, he's on IR. More attention's going to be on Parker, and they're going to have guys like Jakeem Grant try to beat him as defenses. So Parker, I think he could have a bust performance with a single-digit type of fantasy day. So that's 3 receivers that I think are going to be duds heading into Week 10.